everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Executive Committee meeting to order. It's June 26th, 2026. And the first item on the agenda is roll call.
Yes, thank you. Committee Chair Showalter.
Here.
Director Klein.
Here.
Director Tyson.
Here.
Director Makachuk.
Present.
Thank you. Director Martinez-Beltran is absent, but we do have a quorum.
And I'm here.
I'm sorry. Director Meadows is here.
Director Meadows in the house.
One absent.
He's on the staff end of the table.
Yeah, that's hence the confusion.
Empty seat here.
That's really close to the camera. It's not flattering.
All right, so next item on the agenda is public comments on matters not listed on the agenda. Public may provide comments on any matter not listed on the agenda, provided that it is within subject matter jurisdiction of SVCE. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. And we can add a little time if needed, and the complexity of the matter. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. Is there anyone who would like to speak to us?
We have no one online, Chair.
All right, so I will close the public comment period and move on to the consent calendar, which is an action item. And I think the thing that was on, really the only thing that was on the consent calendar is the minutes of the previous meeting. Anybody in the committee have any comments on that minutes?
I missed the meeting, but the minutes are very clear. I felt like I got a sense of the flow, if you'd call it that, of the meeting.
Me too. Okay. So, is there anyone who would like to make public comment on the minutes?
No hands raised.
All right. So, I would like to ask for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second by Klein.
So we have a motion and a second. We can have a voice vote. So all in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody's in favor, that's unanimous. So we can move on to the regular calendar. The first item is the CEO update, and that is a discussion, and it will be led by Zoe Elizabeth.
Hey, good morning. So we have 2 items on the update. One is our regular update on the building progress. So the building is progressing. Again, I'm the good news. Yeah. I mentioned in the last couple, we are delayed. We originally were hoping to move in the beginning of July. We have to be out of this building at the end of July, which we are on track to do. You'll see there's boxes around. We've packed up all of our dishes. So we do we will move out on time. The current anticipated date for full completion of the building is the end of August. We are also anticipated to receive an updated schedule from the contracting team this afternoon. They haven't indicated anything beyond the end of August. So we are planning to have the first board meeting probably in October to give us enough time to do the AV. Because we also have a fantastic team that likes to make sure we have contingencies. We actually have reserved the Sunnyvale room through the end of the year, should there be other unanticipated delays, just so we have a good backup and can feel there.
And this meeting or other such meetings, would that be in the new building then?
Depends on when we have our build out of our AV equipment. Likely, if not, we would also at the Sunnyvale.
But this is our last time probably in this building.
That's right. Yeah, the last time.
Okay.
And so generally what's going to happen in July when you don't have either building?
Well, we're working on kind of 2 fronts, but that we are hoping to move into the upstairs portion of the building with a temporary certificate of occupancy before the downstairs and the rest of the building is complete. We also have a contingency plan there where we're looking at, there's a co-working space in downtown Sunnyvale that would provide backup space for staff with, of course, additional remote options for folks who are working remotely.
All right.
Are the delays increasing the cost of the building, or is it just a time delay, not a cost increase.
There have been some change orders that have led to some increases to the cost of the building, still within our allowed amount. But they aren't directly attached to the delay. If that, there's sort of some of the cost increases were for some changes that were made once we moved in, and then also some things that were missing in the plans that weren't caught early on. But then the time delays are mostly separate from that, except for the one instance, we did make some amendments to the doors in a couple of places. That did lead to some delays because they missed an inspection.
And what about the furniture coming in and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting, fun process to make sure that that lines up. Who knew? But yeah, so we currently have plans for the furniture to come in, and there's big coordination between the electrician and the furniture installers. So again, we're going to be moving furniture out of this building at the end of July, and it will be installed right away in the upstairs part of the building. Some of the existing furniture will then be stored. There's an area, you might remember this, that we aren't building out yet, and some of that will stay there. But there's coordination between the electrician and the furniture installers to make sure they're aligned.
Okay.
Yeah.
There seems to be a number of moving parts,
Yeah.
which I appreciate, having gone through a few office moves.
Absolutely, lots of moving parts. All right.
Best wishes.
Yeah, we're excited.
Possible.
We look forward to celebrating having a full ribbon cutting. The space will be fantastic when it's done, but you all know it's a process to get there. The next item, we've got some pictures. And there is,
From the other night.
yes, June was a really fun renewable energy ribbon cutting bonanza, I'll say. So we've got Chris on the line who can answer detailed questions about these two projects, but I'm just going to give some high level stats. Sunzia Wind came online in June 2026. Monica, Director Showalter, and Chris Van Vector attended the ribbon cutting, the celebration in New Mexico. It's you may have seen the news about this project. It's really exciting. It's the largest renewable energy infrastructure project in US history. Over 3,600 megawatts of wind generation in New Mexico with a 550-mile high voltage DC current transmission line, which is capable of delivering about 3,000 megawatts of clean energy across the West. So we all talk a lot about the needs for transmission. This is an exciting project, not just for the wind, but also that transmission. And CCA's played a really important role in making that project a reality. There's 8 CCAs that are project off-takers, collectively contracting for about 1,800 megawatts of the project's output. SVCE share is 125 megawatts, which meets about 5 to 9% of our clean needs for 15 years. Big deal. And then again, New Mexico wind is a really nice complement to our power supply because it delivers clean energy in the late evening and nighttime hours when solar tends to wind down. I think there's other, yeah, okay, yeah. And then,
I'm sorry, I thought you were done with Sunzia, but when we went there,
yes.
Larry and I and some others in October, we had the wonkiest presentation ever. And it was this guy giving us a 30-minute lecture on how high voltage DC and how it works, why it makes sense. And I remember, so I think it was Britta looked at me and said, "You probably understood that." I'll take that compliment, and I almost did. It was really, really cool.
Really exciting. And then Tumbleweed also came on in June. Monica Zakliski and Pam Leonard, as well as Chair Klein, attended ribbon cutting, which was in Rosemead on June 18th. Rosamond, thank you. In Kern County, different area of the state. It went commercial June 1st, and the resource is a 75 megawatt long duration storage battery, lithium ion, capable of discharging for over 8 hours. Again, we know how important this resource is. It's the first such project to be connected to the CAISO grid and the first project contracted through California Community Power. Our share is close to 16 megawatts or 127 megawatt hours, and it meets our midterm reliability procurement order coming down from the state. And then overall, we have about 567 megawatts of BESS in our portfolio, varying in duration from 1 to 8 hours.
Okay. Well, are there any questions or comments?
Oh, Larry's pointing at something there, look at that.
Yay, well,
I always highlight.
well, actually, do you have some questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have some comments. It was just an amazing experience to go to this. I had been told that it would be, but it really was. You know, that technology that you described is really kind of state of the art. A little bit of it has been done apparently in Sweden, but in America, this is new. And 550 miles. I mean, as somebody who's dealt with some big projects before, just the right of way for that is mind-boggling. And so I think that this is something that we should be really proud of, because the CCA movement has had has been a force in making these large projects happen. And really, that's one of the things we were supposed to do. But there's not a lot of good news in the moment in the news. So this clean energy good news is something I think we really want to be stressing. And I would request that we send out to all members of the board and alternates a write-up with a couple of pictures of these two projects. Because or maybe a press release, I don't know what's best, staff can decide that, but I really think that we want to get the word out about this is something that we are helping to accomplish. And that's really a big deal.
I was going to say that I do a lot of traveling, and whenever I'm flying east to Dallas or wherever, you can see SunZia on the ground. Like, it's, as you said, 550 miles, you can't miss it. And you see these things, and it was always kind of like, what's that down there? And now I know exactly what it is. You can see the different windmills.
It's 90 miles of windmills. They distributed over 90 miles. There's 916 of them. So that's another thing, is that, they stretched it out enough so that the environmental impact at every locale is mitigated. And that was on purpose, because they wanted to build it as sort of gently on the land as possible. And that's again, the right of way just boggles my mind.
And I'll pile on, I thought, well, SunZia last year and visiting that, and the AC to DC, DC to AC, that whole conversion, which I didn't, when we first talked about it, was like, I thought the losses would never make that viable, and so that was a positive thing of going into the deep technology last year and finding out what their actual losses are. And it's like, yes, it makes sense. The 550 miles. If only the high-speed rail could get its act together. It's many miles shorter than that to get from San Francisco to LA. From a right standpoint. But yeah, it was great to see that project go on. So I'm glad you were able to represent the board there, because I think that was, too many things happening in the council meeting that night and all that. Minor things like that. And then to see Tumbleweed last week was just amazing. It's like the concept that this is only the first 8-hour storage within the state. And it's like, trying to keep power overnight once the sun goes down, that's a critical thing. And happy that, we made a difference. So I totally agree with the chair on how we promote this, especially to our board members. It is a story. And so whether or not, bringing up the same thing at the next board meeting, and then, or not even waiting to that, but just talking points of, the photos and the talking points, because it's education, the process and all that. So I posted about it yesterday and lots of positive comments. And you see we're finally, well, not to get ahead of ourselves, but it's people are finally recognizing SVCE name more and more. And the more we're pointing to, this is the positive effects of this organization, the better it is. So
Where did you post it?
I posted on Facebook and Instagram and lots of positive feedback and, you know,
I see Monica does a lot on LinkedIn, and that's really good, links in with these other CCA orgs.
I posted it on Threads and I found out I have no followers. So,
Guilty.
yeah. Not even on Threads. I have someone else doing my LinkedIn, so it might pop up there in a week or so.
seriously, this is a big deal.
Yes.
We're really pleased by it. And thanks to Chris for being there and able to answer all questions that came up. Do you want to talk about a little bit about what your role was in the project?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got Cynthia through one of our RFOs, right? And so projects, they come up when the developer is ready to market them. I think a lot of CCAs were going to market at the same time. That's why 8 of them were participating, took a piece of it. But then we negotiated our contracts and took them to the board. Board approved it, and you know that's the process.
And Chris, when did we sign that contract? How long have we been?
It would have been October of 23. That's when we took the first tranche, and the second tranche came in 24.
Several years.
Yeah. But this is this project was 20 years in the making.
Wow.
The thing about this is that this was the folks that ended up taking it across the finish line aren't the ones who conceived of it. It's just takes forever for these big projects to come along.
It does, and they said it took 16 years for the permitting and 3 years for the construction. So it sounds like, you know, when they got to the point where they were starting to construct it, they were marketing it to sell it, which makes sense, yeah, and we got on board. Okay, good to know. All right, just wanted to talk about that a little more. So we'll move on to, that's it? Okay, do we have any public comment on our CEO report?
Actually, don't you want to mention the award Monica got the other night as part of the
Oh.
CEO report?
That's right.
Yes.
I tried to, she was trying to be hush and modest.
Well, she's not here.
Yeah.
So I overruled her.
Right,
Yeah.
fantastic,
Yes.
yes. The other evening, we got the honor of celebrating Monica as one of the region's Women of Influence at Silicon Valley Business Journal's 50 Women of Influence in the Valley. I saw press release on Monday.
Okay.
Great. Right. So now we move on to item 3, integrated decarbonization roadmap, strategic recommendations.
Okay, this is a discussion item. This has been part of a discussion we started last December. And this probably goes out without saying, but just gonna say anyways, you're talking about this at the staff level. As a mission-driven organization, mission really is our bottom line. In a lot of ways, this roadmap is about how we fulfill our mission over the next several years. And so we take the process really seriously and we really appreciate your input along the way. It's a big topic with lots of different components. We keep breaking out different pieces of the discussion. Overall, the roadmap aims to answer 3 questions for the board, which is, what is our vision for decarbonized 2045? What will it feel like? What benefits will it bring to people? What is our role in advancing that future? This is always a really important and difficult question to answer. And how do we track progress? This is something the board has asked us at different points in time, right? We've got these big ambitious goals. How do we know that we're moving towards them? So those are the 3 questions. One question I do have for you, and if you're open to giving this input, is are these the right questions? Will this give you the information that you need to make good decisions? We've got time, we've kind of several months until we finalize, but this is how we're framing it now. And just quick for a reminder that our first decarbonization roadmap came out in 2018. This effort really is about building upon that strength. I've been reviewing again what's in that document, and it's shocking actually how much of it still really holds true, a lot of the great foundations. But a lot has changed. We've grown as an organization, and this is really about refining and reflecting the current times. So just to kind of brief overview, and we'll go more into this in August, but we set out goals and targets. We have a region-wide GHG target. In 2026, we're refining that to add targets by machine type, which makes kind of a big wide emissions target more actionable. We talk about the focus on buildings and transportation. That remains true, but back in 2018, I don't think there was even program staff yet. Amy was here as the director. If she had anybody yet on her team, it was just about identifying what are the early stage programs. Is anybody going to want a rebate? And now we have over 50 programs, I think. So it's really about evaluating success and thinking about how we refine those going forward. And then integrating supply and demand. We are calling this the integrated decarbonization roadmap. Power supply was talked about in 2018, but predominantly supply and demand planning were separate. We were just kind of getting there. And now we're really integrating that process. We actually have a planning team that is comprised of Marin's team and my team, and then thinking about how demand can even help us to meet those reduction targets over time. And then evaluation and decision-making. So there was a decision-making framework, and we continue to report on our board, but this is about going beyond how we report now to have a more comprehensive, consistent set of evaluation criteria that are reflective of our full program. Okay, so we've broken this discussion really into two components. One is around the vision statement, and then we're just developing this now. So this is me coming to get more input, reflection from you all. But we're breaking down this idea of vision into 3 areas. Values is like, what does success feel like for our communities? And how does it benefit our communities? The technologies is, what does success look like? How does it operate? How does a decarbonized economy operate? And then the process is, what do we do when? So it's really about the order of operations. A lot needs to happen in the next 20 years to reach that electrified future, but we don't need to do everything all at once. And then clarifying SVCE's role. This was really going to build off of previous discussions that we've had with the board, but also with other stakeholders. We want to come back and get input on 2 particular details around innovation and speed, which continually came up as question areas. We want to give you more opportunity to give us input before we have recommendations. Okay, jumping right in. So this again is the values. What will it feel like? What benefits does electrification, decarbonization bring to our communities? We pulled these value statements from the discussions that we have had with the board and tried to put them as you see them in front of you. So first, comprehensive and inclusive. All buildings and transportation run on carbon-free energy, and everyone benefits. Safer and healthier. Less pollution means cleaner air, less disease, and safer communities. In the all-electric future, electric is the easiest and most cost-effective choice, affordable and accessible. Community-centered, and I think this is really important for a CCA made up of 13 distinct communities, that clean energy empowers every community to thrive in its own way. So what electrification looks and feels like in Los Altos may be different than what it looks and feels like in Sunnyvale, and that's a wonderful thing. Each of our communities gets to determine that. And then also, clean energy is really people-focused. It's about helping people to live and thrive, which might sound obvious, but those of us who get really wonky, we think about often electrons and machines, but ultimately electricity is there so that we can live our lives, thrive, start businesses, and do all of those things. And in many ways, is invisible, but it's about what's behind how we live. These are just pictures, and the questions, that we're seeking input on are, do these values resonate with you all? Is there anything that is missing?
Are you asking us right now?
Well,
Because I do have one comment.
I will
Or you wanna
defer,
wait
I will
till the
defer
end
to
of
the
it?
chair of how you want to do, if you prefer to wait to the end for a discussion, or if you want to.
How many questions do you think there are? Like,
There are two sets of questions, one on the vision statements and then one on areas of our role.
okay, let's get to the vision and talk about vision.
Okay, and break for the next session, okay? So the second part of the thinking about the future is what technology looks like. And if you are like me and you've read a lot of decarbonization plans and climate action plans, oftentimes when people show the future, they show a very specific technology future. Maybe there's autonomous vehicles, or there's a lot of flexible demand, there's all sorts of things really focused on what the home looks like, or the business looks like, or our communities look like. But what we're clear about at SVCE is that there's some things that we know about that technology future, and there's a lot of things that are really still in discovery. And then, as you'll see in the process stage, we're actually in the phase of development when technology, business structures, and regulation are being developed that will determine what that technology future looks like. But to be successful, there are some things that need to be true. One, all buildings will be electric. They're going to be mostly heat pumps. There might be some other novel solutions. I have solar hot water heating at my house because it works best. But for the most part, we're talking about a lot of heat pumps. Cooking is going to be induction. But there's key questions. Are those appliances going to be battery integrated? Are they going to be really flexible or kind of minimally flexible based on the needs? What are the new retrofit technologies going to look like? We need new technologies that are actually meant not just for new construction, but to be installed. Transportation, again, passenger vehicles are really going to be electric. Probably most fleet vehicles will be electric. Charging will be commonplace and standardized. What we don't know yet is how are heavy duty vehicles going to be powered? Will there really be a clean hydrogen or other solution that's out there? What car brands are going to be out there and who's going to make them? Are we going to have, is most travel going to be autonomous and shared? They're going to be flying vehicles that come. There's a lot of innovation that's been on the, and we just don't know exactly what that's going to look like. Our vehicle is going to be used as backup batteries at the grid level, these sorts of things. Again, these are in discovery. And then on the demand flexibility, we haven't talked as much with the board about this integrated piece. You'll be hearing more actually in August with a presentation from Joey's team on one of our projects there, but also the integrated place. But what we do know is that demand will be more flexible. Electric appliances are more flexible. The level of solution that is and which customers are participating in that flexibility is still being determined, as well as the regulatory and business models. And then that power supply, what does a clean power supply look like? We know, as you all heard, probably in the IRP discussion last month, there'll be significantly more clean firm power. What that mix is, we don't know. Will it be nuclear, a lot more geothermal? How much will be carbon capture and storage? And what, again, will the role and size of flexible loads be? So that's on the technology side. And the next thing that's important for our vision is understanding that this transition will happen in phases, which maybe sound obvious when we do it, but I think actually laying out that order of operations is really important for understanding what SVCE's priorities should be today. And I'm going to actually start with the end and go backwards to share kind of how this looks. So if you think about getting to a place where we have about 1 million machines today that need to be electrified, right? When nearly everything in buildings is electrified in transportation. Well, first, that means there's going to need to be a managed transition of the gas system. At some point, that's likely to be a planned and top-down
When you say machines, can you define machines,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah.
That was
Oh, yes, absolutely.
my question.
Yeah, absolutely. When we say machines, we mean home appliances, basically, and cars and trucks. Those are predominantly machines. There's other machines that are within industrial applications. We can say appliances and cars if it's easier. But okay, we can start saying
Machines
appliances
is-
and cars.
Is
not
too
intuitive.
generic and
Yep.
raises questions, so,
Yep.
yeah.
About 1 million appliances and vehicles that need to be electrified. Absolutely.
And the other thing, you just said something that is very important, the commercial industrial versus residential. Somehow I think the roadmaps are similar but different.
Yeah.
So sorry, you wanted comments at the end, but I just.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll show just in a second too that really all of these technologies have different adoption curves. That is important. So, but anyways, I want you to just think about that because it's important at the end, right? That to get to that place, there will need to be a managed transition off of the gas system. That's also involves things like gas stations. Also really important is that's not today. That's not something that we need to figure the engineering out on today, but eventually you'll get to that we'll get to that place. And if you think about before that can happen, you need to have much more rapid technological innovation. There needs to be clarity in rate structures. There needs to be consistency in EV business models. And SVCE's programs likely at that point can begin to move towards more targeted kind of investments. But before you get to that managed place, you need to have a lot more rapid acceleration. Before you can get to a kind of rapid acceleration, you need better technological solutions. You need clear consistency in rates and much lower costs is the biggest thing. We really need to drive down those costs. So higher demand, better technology, which is really the place that we're at right now. So we call this the develop phase. We're past the proving ground that we were in previously. We aren't quite yet to this place where there's full speed and takeoff. The next thing that's important to keep in mind in this transition is that, well, broadly, you can kind of break this into develop, build, and deploy. Each technology will develop at a different pace for a variety of factors.
Need a ruler.
A
lot of info.
And then one thing we also think is really important is that neither policy incentives or private sector alignment alone are sufficient for this kind of transition. So you see a lot of the work that SVCE does, right? We work with our local electeds on things like building codes, on permit policies. We also work at a state level to ensure policy alignment. All of that is essential kind of piece of the process, as is incentives to encourage demand and private sector alignment. We do a lot of other types of partnerships. So in summary, each of these phases builds upon the other to expand electrification. This ensures that no one's left behind. And it also ensures that things aren't pushed too fast, that we don't move into sectors where we aren't ready for electrification yet. We require policies, incentives, and market action. And then SVCE's work really needs to be informed by the phase of the transition that we're in.
Okay, so we've gotten to the end of the vision presentation, so let's talk about, do you actually want us, you don't want us to come up with wording, you just want us to talk about the policies and ideas, right?
And I'm happy to pull up that.
The next slide was the.
Okay, all right, so you had some comments?
Well, it was wording, but you know, when you looking at the values, slide 6, I just, you know, maybe it's my professional background, and I don't know if George reacted to this as well, but throughout you've referred to health and healthcare, which is the right way to refer to it. But in the value statement itself, you talk about disease. The term disease has a different connotation, usually contagion and bacteria and viruses and whatever. So I would stick with the healthier, which is better. You know, I don't know what you think, George, but in my background, we're not talking disease, we're talking about health impacts.
Adverse health impacts.
Yeah. Yes.
This is a discussion, you just want comments?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Comments, questions?
Oh,
Comments, questions, yeah.
first of all, I was doing a home office move in the last few days, and I have a copy of that 2018 document, a hard copy.
Wow.
I was on the customer program advisory committee back in the day. Anyways, I think automation to turn on, off things, machines, if you will, is really important. But all that I think is going to be automated, and I think that's it's going to be driven by price signals. And I think that dynamic pricing is going to become prevalent, and I think that's the future, supply and demand. The other thing is just a general term question. Do you want to mention AI in this at all? And technology is going to change. Who knows what it's going to be in 10 years, much less 19 years. But I use AI every day. And my son works for PwC, and they're actually measured on how much AI they use, the models. And they have listings by how much AI they're using by level. So anyways, I just think that's got to be. And then you mentioned no one gets left behind. That's important, but I don't think we should hinder early adopters. And I've electrified years ago. I've got X number of electric vehicles. I was an early adopter, and it costs me more and it's more difficult. But I think we should recognize that, just both sides of the coin. Couple of questions and comments.
Okay.
Yeah, I will add on to that AI. I can't turn around every single email that is how to implement AI. It's everywhere. And so I think it's worth mentioning, is make sure that we're part of that. When I reviewed all this, I thought, walking into here, I thought, you know, I feel like so many things are going well for us, new applications of things and people converting vehicles and all this. But the biggest disappointment is our actual carbon footprint isn't getting better. And so I didn't see any mention in there, and I don't know how to do it. But you know, we were all excited after 2020, and then we just kind of bounced back. And so there's a big puzzle to me. How come it's not really getting better? And comment later on about the barrier being cost. And I'm thinking back to when I put in solar, I looked at cost and then I looked at return. So it was payback. So it wasn't just cost. It was, am I gonna save money? And how is that gonna work? Because anytime, and especially considering how much commercial industrial we have, that's gonna be the driver here is what is the return for people? And that's gonna be based on things we can't exactly control, like electric cost versus natural gas cost. But it's gonna be the thing that drives it. And we do properly with our rebates to reduce that cost, which increases the payback time. But I think that's so many people, including me, are sitting on a gasoline car that isn't broke yet. And why haven't I converted? Because I'm not like him, this altruistic guy who does stuff so he's on the technology bleeding edge, and I'm waiting for it to be really good for everybody, including that vehicle to grid, which I really want. So anyway, that's just some of my thoughts.
I think to pick up on some of your points, one is the total cost of ownership, right? Which the total cost of ownership is lower with, generally speaking, electrified machines. So, sorry, just.
Sure. First, several things from a vision standpoint, and this kind of goes back to what George was saying. Is our goal to from an organization to focus on flexibility and reducing demand? And if that's the case, or let's say reducing demand or the flexibility of moving on the grid, there are two very different things at the end of the day. Conceivably, one of which is, it's like, oh, changing the residential customers to say, yes, use the power, use whatever machine, not to misuse that, but to use that power midday when energy is used, when energy is cheaper, and kind of pushing towards that time of use concept that ultimately it looks like the grid is going to, or is it just to reduce overall usage within the district? And then is it bang for the buck of are we focusing on it's like commercial is our biggest portion. We can change, some residential, but it's hitting thousands of single family homes. Or is it focus on business to reduce load and conceivably figuring out how, most of them are already, they are business conscious and, well, they automatic lights and things of that nature. But as you get smaller and smaller from smaller businesses, they're not as automated. It's like, yes, the big tech companies are that way. So is it commercial, large commercial first, and then apartments? And I don't know from, the bang for the buck of, but just looking at it externally, I think we get much better benefit in funding multifamily than trying to upgrade single family after single family. But it's like, just from a cost of where we're spending our money from projects. So if there's kind of two things there that I think we do need to say, is our goal to basically load shift and have that flexibility of forcing load shift, whatever the technology is, or is it just to reduce overall load completely? And it's like trying to say, yeah, this is the way to use less power. And you mentioned batteries within appliances. That to me starts, the use of batteries everywhere to me is a worry, and as we see with the e-scooters and the e-bikes and all that, the failure, the potential failures, as well as just the fires that DPS is having to already deal with, oh, this is what happens when an EV catches fire. To have your stove and every device in your house having its own lithium-ion cell, to me only raises an issue. And I don't know if I haven't seen that as the next direction, but it is, keeping this board up to date on that, because that to me is a scary thing. I've already talked to the county fire chief on the wall storage and that distributed throughout the communities if there's a fire, and how that conceivably spreads and explodes, and it becomes a much bigger issue from that standpoint, from the protection standpoint. So I don't know what our goal is as we're talking about this long-term vision. Is it bang for the buck, or is it, there's the positive the positive district impact of reducing overall load, or is it shifting load? And then how we're investing in those, in this technologies. And as much as you say we're proven technologies, I think we're still dependent upon technologies that aren't proven. As much as you're saying we're kind of in the develop stage phase of the like long-term progress towards, 2045. I think we're still in the, yes, it's what's proven or what, we're still focused on technology improvements in order to get us to 2045. And this goes back to, we're not there. We, either the load is too high or, it's people going back into their gas-driven cars that's caused us to have greenhouse gas, emissions back to where it is. But we don't have a fleet we don't have transportation, electric transportation within our community enough for people to get everywhere, or EVs aren't cheap enough. And you look at what most of the automakers are doing right now, they're backing off from the EV.
They're going hybrids.
They're going either hybrids because of the concerns about distance, and a lot of that goes down to distance. So I don't think I don't have the answers, obviously, and I don't think any of us have the answers, but I do think, focusing on where we want to make that change and what that goal is. Is it, or conceivably it's both of those, it's load shift and reduction, and conceivably local storage or local generation for the grid. Those are all positive things that this organization can have a positive impact on, but we can't do everything, and I would love to have those discussions on, here's our priorities of is it commercial reduction of load, and then is it load shift of residential? It might be a graph of, okay, here's the two things, what we're doing something slightly different for commercial versus residential. But we know, here's how we get to big wins, or here's what our goals are. And conceivably, it's a mixture of those two. But I'll get off my soapbox. I've talked for way too long. Sorry.
Do you want me to respond to some of the things that have come up, or do you want to keep going? I'm just making notes of things that I sound like there's questions
I
on.
think we have two more people who want to speak. I want to speak, and you wanted to speak again?
And I do, because I just made a wording comment.
Oh, okay, so
Okay.
I don't think we're quite.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
All right, are you done?
Yeah,
Oh, well, anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you next, or?
No.
Yeah, she can.
Okay, so Larry, I think this is really good having the discussion, because I don't think we should get granular in the vision. But I think high level, to pick up on what you were saying, I think one of the objectives that SVCE should do is to maximize the throughput through the grid and distribution, so that we're reducing bottlenecks, because that's a problem and it causes price. So in general, we want to maximize throughput through the day, so your utilization is higher. Then the other thing is to reduce the adverse environmental impact of battery storage or electric devices, right? Like, we should, as we're increasing batteries, let's think about the total. Don't want to get into the detail, but I think that's the concept that you were trying to make. And then my other point is, I went down to Diablo Canyon, and I was blown away at how positive that is. And I think that that's the crown jewel inside of PG&E's asset base. But and I'm wondering, and there seems to be more of a move towards nuclear now. The pendulum is swinging, especially with all the new Westinghouse nuclear plants that are going to be coming, that are in progress. So I'm just wondering if you want to emphasize that a little more. It's just an observation. Sorry, those are my
Okay, great.
3 points.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I want to pick up on the shift versus reduction argument, because I think that's an important one. And I don't remember the details, but I think it was a couple of years ago, we had a project. It was a commercial customer, and we were helping them insulate so they'd have less, and I could be remembering this wrong, but helping them insulate, they'd have less losses and they'd be, conserving energy and whatever. And my concern at that time was that didn't seem, although useful broadly, environmentally, it didn't seem as aligned with our goal and our mission. And so I do think the shift versus reduction gets to an important mission question. And whether it's shifting usage through behavior like time of day, or it's shifting carbon-based consumption to electric consumption. Those are sort of the two shifts, and those are more closely aligned in my mind than helping people insulate or whatever. I could be misremembering the project. I don't know if you remember what project I'm talking about. It was Justin presented it at one
For the
point, but
heater plant, we had an insulation of the neighborhood, in the lower income kind of surrounding area, and frankly.
right, but
I
no,
thought
that was a community benefit
it was a
though. I think I'm
community benefit.
talking about
I was
something.
on board with that.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with that, but there was something that I thought was a local project, whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point being, shift in behavior and usage, and shift in carbon versus carbon-free production are both directly, in my opinion, related with the mission. So I think that's kind of the yardstick that's important. And thank you to Chair Klein for bringing that up. Well, Chair Klein, your chair today, but you know what I mean.
Larry.
Yeah. Well, thank you to Larry, yes, okay. And then I want to say one more comment on the no one left behind. And that is great. But, who pays? Because this is a nut that we're always running into particularly if we talk about multifamily and, renting and, the renters aren't gonna pay and then the owners with it. So it's a very complicated, so no one left behind is noble, but getting there requires a lot of more thinking than we've done or achieved, or maybe there's some sort of paradigm shift, I don't know what, but that's a really hard thing, because who pays?
Yep.
Right, so, anyway.
Okay, I wanted to add in a couple of more things. Okay.
We're not gonna stop.
One is, I think that part of our mission is to help reduce power outages. That is one of the things, when I hear people talk as a barrier to electrification, is, they want to be able to cook with gas in, or they want, they're gonna have a generator. They're gonna need a gas generator. So I think that, something about, and I know that, anyway, so I think that reduction in or increase in stability of system is good. The other thing I think is
Reliability.
Grid.
reliability, yes, grid reliability. Yes, and then the other thing I think is really important, is making sure that we are on the cutting edge of figuring out what doesn't work. And I think that, the flip side of that is what does work. But we want to be pragmatic, because we want to get these goals accomplished. And some processes work better than others. And I would also say I see us as a government agency. Maybe we're not quite a government agency, but as a government agency, policy is huge. And we've seen in the last, couple of years how devastating policy changes can be. But on the flip side, they can also be very, very powerful. So I think that our role as a policy driver is really huge. And that's just one issue. Okay.
So I have a true confession. I have made a serious mistake. And it's to the whole heat pump Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and I have been reading next door. Okay, and anybody who's elected official.
That's your mistake.
Mistake.
That's your mistake.
understands exactly what I'm talking about. And this is a vision document, this is 2045, so maybe I'm getting a little too short-term and tactical, but we've got a big thing coming up that is gonna twist all the
Yes.
vision that comes after. And we need something that helps these poor people with their outrageous misconceptions. And some people are trying and some are not. And I'm reading them and I'm thinking, yeah, you got it, you don't. And this person is not listening, and this person is a troll and using somebody else's name, and this probably is an AI. Anyway, I'm just saying, there's some wall of opportunity. I don't know if it's opportunity, but we shouldn't be ignoring the fact that people on that forum are very confused, and they're looking for help, or pretending to, I don't know which.
Yeah.
And it's something I think we need to find some way to address.
Oh, well.
I don't know.
That's a gigantic problem, way beyond.
Yeah.
It covers all the topics we deal with in government.
But you're right, there is a plethora of posts at the moment on Nextdoor. I too have started reading it, which is a serious mistake.
Yes.
But that said, I make lots of serious mistakes.
Join the club.
But I've just been astounded at how, and I've observed this in restoration work too. You know, once the false statement is reported enough times, it becomes truth, people. And it's it's really a danger. I don't know how it relates to this or how we fight against it, but it's, and in this case, that's what they're doing. You know, they're spouting the same falsehoods, and they don't care if, there are 20 comments underneath them that say, no, actually, that's not true. They just repost it.
Yeah.
Well, the false statements are simple and clear. The false, and the truth is always more complex.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
You just mentioned something that I want to add from a bigger picture level. I think the theme is that SVCE should do two things. A, we should provide leadership, right? And then the other is our brand is amazing. Like Silicon Valley is a great brand. And I think people look to Silicon Valley outside of this geographic area for leadership. What's going on in Silicon Valley? And I think that what we're doing, what our vision is, people will start to see that and say, okay, that's what they're doing there. They've got the resources. Those are good ideas. So to pick up on the point, like, we should take a leadership role, and we have to, I think that's an opportunity for us to turn around some of the other folks that you're talking about through Nextdoor, et cetera. Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten a little bit off the topic.
Yeah.
Sure you want to respond.
All really good. Okay, so I'm gonna took notes on things, comments to respond them, so I'm gonna go them, and if there's more things you want, let me know. So first, emissions. You mentioned emissions, right? And they're going up. The one thing that I want to say, maybe there's a place to tell this story in the decarb roadmap. One of the reasons that we're saying, hey, let's look at the appliances and vehicles as one of our targets is emissions are a lagging indicator, right? So we adopted REACH codes. We're going to see thousands of appliances installed from those REACH codes, even though the laws have changed, but it takes a lot of time for that to happen. Vehicle turnover takes a lot of time. The other thing is there's a lot of noise within emissions. So CARB changed their model because they realized people are keeping their cars longer than they thought that they were, which really actually ended up changing overall emissions. It's not a reflection of what we're doing, but you're seeing that. So I just want to say that, right? Lagging indicator, there's a lot of noise. There's one other thing I want to, the other thing is in this transition, it's not that we have this beautiful slide of emissions. When you zoom in, it's not going to look like that. There's going to be years when things go up and years when things go down. And so we want a way to be able to tell this story, even, to build out, right? We may need to install a lot more EV chargers than are needed before we can pull back on the gas stations, right? And so it's not going to be a very neat and smooth transition, even though our graphs make it look that way. So we need to be able to tell both of those stories, and maybe part of that needs to be shared, the decarb roadmap, but, and then there was a lot of comments brought up around, demand shaping, load shift. So we are gonna talk about this in more detail in August. But I think what I wanna say here in terms of what is our goal? Our goal really is clean energy and electrification. Flexibility is a means to make that happen, right? If we sort of look at the overall system, you say if you can move more load to cleaner times more cost effectively, that's a means to meet that emissions. Clean firm power, nuclear, hydro, carbon capture are another means to make that happen. So a lot of what we're figuring out right now is what is the best means and how much of a role does flexibility play. We're gonna answer some of those questions in the decarb roadmap, but we also imagine it to being a follow-up exercise. And just to note on the batteries, I have similar thoughts and questions. So just a note on I want to just say there's a lot of competing technologies and business models that are being developed right now. And so we just want to be clear on that, right? There's batteries that are being controlled at the utility side. And then there's VPP models, which is more about control at a building level. And then there's some cool programs. Like one example in New York State where they're connecting batteries to air conditioning, right? So there's no control involved, but people have control at the appliance level. You don't know exactly what's going to end up being the most cost-effective alternative and what consumers are going to be interested in. So we're in that stage right now. But our goal is really about the reducing emissions and doing it in a way that is affordable and leads to more reliable energy. So I want to just kind of state that goal and means. You mentioned the order, and I think it's a great thing for us to making a note to be really specific about in the decarb roadmap. This comes a little bit in the next place, and it is intuitive to look and say most of our emissions are in the C&I space, and there's few customers there. What we have learned is that right now, commercial, industrial, and small medium businesses are much slower to adopt, and those programs are much more expensive to run because they're more administratively burdensome. So if you look at the and this next one, we're actually seeing that small and medium business and large commercial will be after residential. A little different on the demand flex side. Commercial businesses tend to be are familiar with demand response programs, and they're earlier to adopt and more sophisticated in that way. But just wanted to kind of share that we're actually seeing that residential is happening faster and sooner, and there's just more of a business there. And then on the no one left behind and who pays, this is the difficult question, and we want to support early adopters. All of that is so true. In a lot of ways, that's the crux of what we're figuring out in the decarb roadmap and one of the questions we're going to get into. I guess for us, the simple piece of no one left behind means if we want to get to all the machines are electric, that means we need to find pathways that work for all buildings. Does that mean we have to figure out who has to pay? We also have to get to a place where there's technologies that can be that are cheaper to retrofit so that there isn't such high costs ultimately. So, but I think it's one of the big balancing acts that we're working on. And then I heard a lot about the story and making sure to tell the story. And I think it's an interesting thing for us to think about for this document of how this can maybe play a role in telling the story while also being providing specific recommendations. And then finally, there's comment about how to specific to get in the vision and the recommendations. I would love to hear more about that on what you all want. Doesn't need to be today, but even in August, it's something that we go back and forth at the staff, even in this document. I had very specific recommendations earlier of how much detail and at what level to go into. Those are my synthesis of
All right.
responses.
So you want to keep on with your presentation? Yeah. Good.
Okay, so what role in this? I will go through these pieces quickly. Okay, here we go. At the last time I was at the board meeting, Chair Klein actually asked this question, how does SVCE fit into the broader ecosystem, right? There's a lot of people that are doing this work. So this is simply a slide to say we are kind of doing this landscape analysis of where is SVC's role are important. One of the things, providing consistent funding, technical support, building partnerships across agencies is some of the key things that we have found is critical to what we do. We met as a board, and I've shared this a few times, but these are the summaries, and I'm going to ask you to provide more detail here, right? And some of what you already said. Hey, we want to really focus on emissions reductions, move quickly, equal incentives for most folks we think makes the most sense. But we'll still providing customer offerings to everyone. And there's a lot of questions around innovation shared throughout all our stakeholders. Similar from our local stakeholders that we heard, continuing to focus on rebates, incentives, real strong interest in continuing local policy support, as well as things like permitting that just bring drive cost overall. Questions on innovation and what percentage should go to low-income customers versus market rate customers. You're sensing a theme here in the questions. Staff, I'd say this where there was a stronger lean among staff that investment should go towards those with the higher needs and ensuring benefits for all. Also an understanding that innovation was important but unclear. And then one of the things I think was really important is like there's this tension between target incentives, right? We offer rebates. If you're income qualified, you get a higher amount of rebate. And then deep incentives. So things like our affordable multifamily property, full affordable housing, we consider that a deep incentive. Also, actually, you could think of that in the C&I programs where they are, but they're just more expensive to do, right? And so what should the balance be there between not leaving folks behind today, but should we be doing the things that are very expensive, or should we be waiting and investing in those more? Different agencies have very different answers to that question. And I will say that there's not one answer. This is really a values decision for the board to make based on our service territory. So again, there's two areas that we want to get more feedback on today, which is innovation and the balance of focusing on fast and relatively cost-effective versus more difficult and expensive. So this one thing that I met with somebody the other day, they said to me, I think it's really important. The strategy is only so good as you know what you're saying no to. And so, and I know it's also always a very difficult thing for an agency that we always want ands, but why we wanted to bring this back in particular is we did hear clear focus at our board meeting of like, focus on fast and ready. Let's focus on building on early adopters so we can bring down costs overall. But what we want to be clear about that is that means doing less of other things, right? Prioritizing one thing is doing less of other things. So I'm saying here that things that don't fit that category, that are more expensive and harder, these are things that I would say like in our analysis on dollar per GHG are like 5 times more than our most effective program. Multifamily EV charging, really important, right? But multifamily properties, it's difficult, time consuming and expensive. Our large commercial, this also includes our public sector buildings. The fantastic grant projects that we do at libraries and fire stations are really important for community storytelling and community benefit. They tend to be more expensive and long term. Small, medium businesses and older affordable housing. Those are kind of some of the things that are in the bucket. So what we are looking for feedback on is what is the right balance? In all of our thinking, we would not say remove and stop doing these. That could be a decision that you all say a firm, hard no. But that as an LSU, we should continue to have services for all of our customer types. Find different ways to maybe support some of these customer types where it's in a way that's more cost effective and feasible. Maybe instead of grants, there's a kind of financing option or different type of rebate program. But then also decrease if things aren't working, decrease in weight where it makes sense. We're looking for feedback on. And then the other area is innovation. We heard a lot, I think Director Rennie said, we don't want to be on the bleeding edge of electrification. That's not our role. We aren't a tech incubator. But we are Silicon Valley. We have an innovative spirit. And then I'd say our analysis shows we're still in this developing stage where we actually still need to find solutions. And the current staff perspective is that we should maintain a stable but small amount of funding focused on innovation, but it should really be pragmatic. So things like our 100 amp panel pilot, case studies using real customer usage to show how rates are changing, are focused on basically on that first cost problem, which continues to be the key challenge currently. And that's it for those slides.
Okay. So bring it back to the board for discussion. Questions, let's start out a little more orderly this time. Let's go with questions. Anybody have questions? Director Tyson.
You're not supposed to beat my face. I didn't raise those hands.
Very.
It was very easy read.
Like, I don't know, here's my question. I don't know how to organize all these things that are in front of us into some coherent things of what to do. So I don't know if I know how to provide what I think you're looking for.
Okay.
That wasn't a question. That was a question.
Okay.
I will say that, you know, in terms of strategy, there's something we don't do that just occurred to me, and that is, I'm looking at pulling the trigger on a heat pump water heater, even though it's only 9 years old. But really, we shouldn't offer a rebate to me. We should offer a rebate to somebody that has 5 people in their house and is really gonna use a lot of hot water. We don't have anything like that. Like, how much natural gas will I really be reducing? I'll feel good about it, okay? But I won't really be changing that number compared to some other households. That may have been a little too targeted, but it just popped into my head.
I'd like to respond to that. I think that the whole with us helping tradespeople understand how to install these and permitting, inspecting. I mean, we're driving down the cost of that, I think. And you being, for lack of a better term, an early adopter of that, and you know, there may not be a value proposition in it for you, but still I think you're contributing to lowering the cost for everyone else.
Yeah, see that, okay.
And I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, all right, I won't feel quite so guilty.
I would also say from my experience in water conservation that we, in government, we have imperfect data about how many people live in a certain place. And I'm not sure that SVCE has access to that information.
No.
So, okay, any other questions?
Do you want me to, should I clarify what I'm looking?
Yeah, why don't you help us?
Yeah, that's where we're-
I know we just talked a lot, lots of different things. Okay, so here, really, we heard from y'all, right? And we also focus on things that are fast and ready to electrify. We wanted to come back and simply share, here are some of the things that don't fit into that bucket. So when we're thinking about prioritization, following that direction would mean less of a priority on some of the things that don't fit into that bucket. So this is simply an opportunity with giving you a little more detail into the things that don't fit in that bucket to hear your thoughts and reflections. We have proposed kind of a balance down there in this box of how we could meet that priority of focusing on fast and ready to electrify without throwing everything out that's not in that category, and simply looking for, yes, we still think that this is the right way, or looking at this brings up other questions and I need more information.
Would like to make a comment first.
Is it comments or questions?
Both.
Both, okay. I see multifamily EV charging
Okay.
as being something that is, it creates more demand for used EVs, my opinion. And I think there's more and more EVs that are used. For example, when I was at El Diablo, or Diablo Nuclear, Diablo Canyon, the gentleman, one of the gentlemen that was doing the tour, he said, hey, I've got a 2021 Model 3 and I paid $21,000 for it and it's got 21,000 miles, like 20. And so he's in the market for a used EV. I think if we can bring used EVs and have them feasible in terms of having them in multifamily, then that's, I think, we're reducing gasoline consumption. And that's I think that's a good thing. And anyways, so I think that's hard, but I think there's significant benefits there. And as you pointed out that I didn't quite think through, there's a big lag factor, right? You do something and you're not going to get the benefit for a while, and it's just the way it is. But if you don't start, you're not going to get there. So.
Okay. Dr. Meadows?
I'm struggling with this because in a sense, the questions we asked before were a guide to prioritization. And now, rightly so, you come back and say, well, if we prioritize them, we're not doing this. So I don't know if you're asking us to not prioritize, or you're asking us to understand the cost to what we'd be focusing on. So that's why I'm just a little, so I'll tell you, looking at the really expensive / hard, I would have some concern about older affordable housing, because in reality, those places are going to turn over, right? And so if you invest in putting infrastructure in for something that may only be there for 5 years or whatever, because there's turnover. A lot of the older buildings are being developed into bigger, taller, newer buildings. And so I would really, that one strikes me as something that's probably not worthwhile. But I don't know how to, if we put everything back in, then we are where we were before the session. So you got to make some choices. Though I do understand your point of maybe creating a market for used EVs. I don't know what that market, I don't know enough about the market for used EVs, and maybe better batteries will also increase the market for used EVs, because who wants to buy a used EV if the battery needs to be replaced? That's a huge expense. You might as well just buy the new EV, right? So I don't know enough about these things really to comment on them, and I'm concerned about we're basically put everything back in the bucket again. So I don't know.
Dr. Flynn?
Sure, so I think, what staff is coming, there's a balance, and the fast and ready is easy, but you're not going to get as much bang for the buck. And it's like updating one HVAC at a time or one heat pump at a time is great. But sucks in a lot of money, and it's like, well, exactly, it's like from a gas standpoint, well, it's a 2-person household versus a much larger household. I I think that, it's like as much as we don't want to do everything, I think we need to keep focusing on the fast and ready, but not take large projects off the table. And it's like, it's figuring out, and we do that already from a balance standpoint. I do think that multifamily changes habits, and whether or not that's just EVs or whether or not that's working to electrify. It's the big projects have, I'll say, we can highlight one or two residents every year, the 5 residents that electrified and are, our green champions are fantastic. But what has a bigger effect is, this multifamily development now has EV charging and I think that changes habits of a lot of people as opposed to, the easy to do. The easy to do is having, our residents that are living in single family decide to electrify in some way. That's decarbing a little bit of a time as opposed to the bigger push and the big projects of public buildings and, like the positive messaging of helping decarb schools
Big deal.
is a very big deal.
Yeah.
Because that gets our, that's a brand positive thing that as many green champions as we have that are in the neighborhoods is fantastic, but decarbing schools, libraries, that has ongoing, branding that will stay there forever. And I think that's a positive thing that we can't give up. Calling those projects out are important. It's slowly chipping away at our single family neighborhoods and slowly converting them and conceivably making a positive impact on next door. But the big win in next door is, this elementary school now doesn't have furnaces and has good AC as we get hotter and hotter. That's a big win. That is, that has a measurable community impact, health impact on students. And then you just look at the long-term messaging, SVCE is making a difference in the community and
I was also gonna say, it also provides a possible heat
Cooling centers.
cooling centers.
Libraries serve that purpose, so
Libraries
that's
and
an important
elementary
one
schools
too.
would too,
Yeah.
if we could work with our school districts, which
Yes.
don't get me
Yes,
started,
I
but
So I know you're looking for feedback and I think the balance, and that's kind of what staff is coming with. It's like it has to be a balance and the problem is, what we always tell our city staff, do everything, and that's not possible.
Yeah.
But I leave it to staff to kind of prioritize these projects and say we need to keep moving on both. We can't do like every big project, but having a few big projects a year is a positive message, and I'll leave it at that. It's like, I'm sorry not to give you real direction, but I do think that the small ready wins help chip away at our carbon, our footprint and how we decarb, but the big projects do make a difference. And I don't even know small, medium-sized businesses, what that actually means to our load. It's like, it's like, is there a positive win there? And I don't know. It's like, is it decarbing on a strip mall, the whole strip mall together? Or is it business by business within strip mall? I don't know, but I'll stop talking. Sorry.
I like what you're saying about the big signature things that make a splash. Your big pool. Does Silicon Valley Clean Energy have an effect there? Because I'm thinking in addition to the direct things, to serve as a technical resource and help encouragement. I don't know.
I don't know, I don't have a really good answer to that. I'm pretty sure we got rebates for the heat pumps, but I would have to look into that. What?
But it's not just the rebates, it's also the technical assistance and help find things, because with Foothill College Pool, our local environmental group had struggled to help. Because the engineers they hired, not that I have anything against engineers, were
They didn't know
focused
what they
on
were
building what they were used to building.
Yeah, and
And so to the extent Silicon Valley Clean Energy can help direct or marshal resources for some of these large infrastructure projects that we don't even necessarily lead or so, it just helps smooth the way.
yeah, I just to diverge, because of something I do know, is that we found that the contractors just really didn't have their act together, in the sense that, you know, there was one contractor did on one system, one contractor worked on another system. They weren't good at working together. So what happened was we had to go back to our consultant who had been responsible for pool management. And and that consultant turned out to sort of be our, you know, super project manager. And in fact, because he knew that each system had to connect to each system, right? And how they all had to work together. So we literally have a full-time person on staff now that used to be from that consulting firm who did pool management, who was there at Rainstorm all the time, making sure that that runs smoothly. And I mean, literally there were several things that had to be rebuilt because the contractors didn't size the pipes properly. I mean, they were really, it only took 18 months extra to get this thing built. It was just, you know, it was just a sort of an example of a case study of how getting new technology to work is not smooth. You have to carry, anyway, but what happened was we went back to the consultants who operated pools, and they knew how a new pool needed to be built, and we got their engineers to take over the construction management, and that was the secret sauce that made it work. But anyway, I wanted to bring up two things. Okay, I look at these two columns here we have, and the one on the left is stuff we know how to do really well, okay? And there's nothing wrong with keeping going on that. The one on the right is stuff we don't know how to do really well, and we need to learn how to do that, and it's our job to figure out how to do that. So I feel like we need to stay involved in that second column sufficiently so we get these things moved over to the first column. And I don't know what that level is, and I imagine for each of them it's different. But that's kind of my general feeling, is that you know, as innovators, we want to make sure that we are figuring out what the problems are to electrification and solving them. That's what column 2 is.
Okay. I am reflecting on everything that is being said. So one of my questions is, when can we have another workshop? Because this is kind of fun, you know, to brainstorm. No, I mean, I think that I'm not joking. I think that's a serious question. But the other thing is sharing what we learn. I think that should be part of our mission. Because if we're the thin edge of the wedge, to the extent that we share those practices, then it's a force multiplier or whatever you want to say. Anyways, 2 quick comments.
Yeah, and that is something that we seem to do through our CCA organization, and I know that there's staff level technical groups that work on various subjects that hopefully that's
And we
a
are thinking of
methodology.
further formalizing and growing that piece. We have a lot
Yeah,
more learning.
But I agree with you, I think you're right. Okay, so time check, we only have a half hour more than meeting, and I know this was a really substantial part of the meeting, but it wasn't the only part, so.
I've gotten sufficient feedback. I'll just say that we have a work study session before the August board meeting. To the extent that anyone wants to provide feedback on the structure of that study session, it's meant to be a workshop for the board.
Thank you.
By the way, thank you for using real people in your slides. I just
Yeah.
finished a successive training thing, and it's got all these beautiful models laughing and all. Come on, it takes me out of the moment. This one, I think, hey, there's Bruce, there's so-and-so. It's like,
Yeah,
I like it. I think it's worth the extra.
okay, so,
Let me ask a logistical question. So is the study session earlier than the main board meeting, or is it part of the main? Does it start before 6? I mean, before 7, or what? Cause if it does,
Prior to the board
then
meeting.
it should probably get on calendars.
oh, yeah. Reminder, please. Yeah, that's a good point.
Especially because we'll all be taken off any week now, any day now,
Yeah,
and we'll lose all our threads. I know I will.
Yeah, and I seriously, I have to
Yes.
say that, the 10 years I've been on council, the hardest thing is keeping your calendar up.
Oh, yes.
It is
The
just,
sooner
it is
something
really
can be put
difficult.
on there.
And, okay,
Sorry, Andrew, maybe we can just share also the other places where there's input. Should the executive committee meeting or the board want additional workshops or time, we're happy to provide that on the roadmap. Just want to share that. I'm not asking for feedback right now, just saying generally, yeah, if you want.
all right. Then we move on to item 4, which is the SVCE 2026 Electrification and Awareness Residential Customer Survey results.
Yes, okay,
What do people think about us?
Yes, we had some great little nuggets in the comments about great brand, people know us, and then you get a nice
There's
segue
a
of using
picture
real
of Bruce coming
people.
up.
Another picture, right, so, yeah, so just I'm gonna introduce Sean Orgel Olson, he's our marketing manager, who's gonna, who led this year's survey initiative, he's gonna share the key takeaways with you all. We typically bring this item to our executive committee and then present and on the consent calendar for the next board meeting, present the results there for the full board. And just some background that this is a survey we do each year since starting in 2020. Which is about the time before we launched our eHub. So this is when we also had an opportunity to have a program that wasn't our very first program where we had rebates for 200 water heaters, believe it or not, that was it. So really massive full scale effort to do a lot of electrification education. So we're trying to measure over time, how is electrification interest growing, hopefully? And as well as we use the opportunity in the survey to measure awareness of SVCE and how customers are engaging and think about us. So I will just turn it over to Sean to lead you through our findings.
And another thing I thought was really interested in one of the footnotes was, this was done before the Iran war.
Yes.
And so that may have some bearing on the results. Thank you. Okay. Take it away, Sean.
All right, thanks. Let's get started. So I think Pam really summarized this already, but what we're really trying to do here is find out from everyone kind of how the awareness is going, how is our favorability, is it actually a new thing we looked at this year. We also look at likelihood to purchase and all kinds of indicators across the board to see if we're going to be able to get to our long-term goals. And so we're pleased to share these results, and I will just dive right in because you already know the next steps on this. So just for the quick background, we had a really good response this year. And with that higher number of customers that responded, we had a lower margin of error, which is great. This was conducted in the beginning of the year, this year. And we found that this technique that we keep trying of offering a chance to win one of X number of things is really, really effective at getting a lot of people. And Michaela on the Marcom team pioneered this, I think, last year, and kind of compared it to other ways we try to get participation. It's working really, really well. So we were pleased to see the results this time. Just want to bring in the fact that we look at these results through a lens of the SVCE, and I think everyone here is probably familiar or maybe has heard this before, but SVCE uses indicators like exposure to environmental hazards, language isolation, housing quality in addition to income, and it lets us go deeper into our area. So instead of looking at something by a city basis or even a broader basis, like north or south or east and west, we actually get kind of more into the nitty-gritty and able to look at different customer groups that are the most vulnerable. So that 4 is going to be our most vulnerable group versus our least vulnerable group at the one end of the scale. You'll see some of the results are highlighted in that way. And yes, there it is, a real photo again. And we keep pulling some of the gems, so they're probably in both decks. All right, so let's take a look here. as in past years, customers care most about keeping the cost of electricity low. That has continued to be something that's very important to customers, as we would expect. Something that did change and is interesting is that the importance of generating from clean resources increased from what we saw just a couple of years ago. There's a little nuance on how the scale and how things are asked, so just keeping that in mind. But it was a noticeable increase. And also, there's just more interest in how important, I guess it is, to offer services to folks that include rebates and other types of wraparound service that we provide. Awareness of SVCE is consistent with past years. It's gone up a bit, but within margin of error. So we're seeing consistent awareness across the board when we ask people about who they think they currently purchase electricity from. And after we clarify that PG&E, to the folks who didn't know initially, after we clarify that PG&E provides delivery services to the ones who said PG&E only, then we see that it's a greater total, are able to identify us as part of the mix. If we look into the number of people who are aware of us, we actually saw an increase. This is the highest we've ever seen this number compared to all the other years of surveys that we've had so far, and it's a significant one. It's right there on the right. So we're pleased to see that there's greater awareness across the board. A brand new question that we asked this year for the first time ever was about our favorability. I want to know how we are doing on that. And overall, we have a 71% favorable rating. That's what we found here, and we're really excited to see this. Is really great. A great score here, and we can talk about it later if you'd like. But if you look at that favorability in a little bit greater detail, you see that people who know us seem to like us. So the ones who have visited our website, stated that they know SVCE, those ones have a significantly higher, greater total favorability than other respondents had. We also noticed that the knowledge accuracy of respondents differs significantly across the SEBI groups. And so what this stresses is there's still a need to engage and kind of put additional investment into engaging with that audience and continue to offer programs that help them and get the word out to them. And so you can kind of see where they were compared to SEBI 1. It's like there's a significant difference in terms of how they could accurately identify statements about us.
No, I'm confused. Is SEBI 1 the?
SEBI 1's up at the top, so they were able to more often identify the accurate statements.
The most,
SEBI, yeah.
Least vulnerable.
Least vulnerable, got it.
Oh, sorry, yeah, and SEBI 4 is the most vulnerable,
That's what I
but the least likely to identify the accurate statements about SVCE. Again, happy to answer questions at the end if you have any. This is also a new kind of section of the survey that we asked some questions about willingness to pay. So we went to everyone and said, do you agree or disagree with these things? And we asked them, if your electricity was going to be dirtier, essentially, if there was less clean energy, what would it take to shift you over to wanting that dirtier electricity or less clean electricity? And we saw that between $1 and $10, there's a significant number of people who aren't wanting to switch to the dirtier or the less clean option. When you go above $10 of additional cost, that's where there's a significant change in the findings there. This is just really interesting because we hadn't asked this before in this.
And it's related to the financial levers discussion. So that's why we added these questions to gauge, to have some data points here.
So, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the fact that I wouldn't say only 30 to 34%, I'm actually astonished that basically a third of customers would switch to save $1 to $10 a month to door. So I wouldn't call that only third. I would say as much, approximately a third of customers would switch for $10. So I think that's a wow, not a good wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also note that we have a reference point there that we ran some numbers to figure out what the actual dollar amounts might look like, and we just wanted to give round, easy numbers for people to
Right, no.
conceptualize, so
Yes.
that we're looking at, a lot smaller numbers, potentially, I think, in those financial levers discussions in the past.
Well, that shows stickiness or elasticity, right?
Right, well, that's why I'm saying I would have expected more stickiness. For $10 a month, I would have expected 5 to 10%, not 30 to 34%. You know,
The magic is in the wording. If you
I
picture
know,
the
I-
whole
the magic-
smokestack, it might be a different thing
Yeah.
than something more
Yeah.
innocuous looking. Yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you. We also asked another new question around automatic enrollment. You can see the full question text there, but what we found in that is that most customers would prefer to remain automatically enrolled in the cleaner renewable option, even if it costs a bit more. And unsurprisingly, I think that the more affluent SEVI group and homeowner customers had even higher levels of support.
Through the chair, I'm surprised older ends up here unless you're talking about older, basically the Venn diagram of older and homeowner ends up being the same. I would, when I see older, I naturally think of fixed income and I'll say in general, our mobile home community, which we have a very large mobile home community, which is very cost sensitive. And that's where the $10 becomes a big deal. But anyway, I'll just throw that out there now, just to, as opposed to coming back to this slide.
Good point, thank
Do
you.
you know energy usage by SEVI category?
That's a good question for.
Much higher in
Yeah.
71 is generally everywhere higher.
The bigger, more air conditioned things, because I wouldn't know, couldn't know what was gonna dominate it, say higher family, household count versus less insulated and rented, anyway, I wouldn't know.
Square footage always
Longer
dominates, yeah.
commutes,
Do you have this separated out by mobile home parks?
I don't think we have mobile home parks separated out now.
That's an issue in Mountain View also.
I'll note it down then.
Yeah, they don't have access to a lot of electrification. Okay,
Thank you. All right, next up, we have our electrification trends. So we asked, like prior years, about likelihood of purchasing in the next 3 years, a number of different technologies, machines, appliances. And we actually saw the likelihood of purchasing is down from what we're seeing here compared to past years. And there's a bunch of stars, and one of them, had to do with the Iran war and all the different, macroeconomic different forces that are taking place right now. But just want to note that, and I think it just shows that there's still a need to communicate the benefits and tell a story, and there's work to be done around marketing and communication on all of this to keep it top of mind and show the benefits. Just want to highlight that. Yeah.
Question related to that too, and I'm not saying we're at this point, but eventually there's gonna be fewer people switching because a lot of people have already switched, so
that's one of the points, yeah.
is that one of the points where
Well, in
does it say?
2023, I was thinking about a heat pump HVAC, and guess what? Now I have one, so I'm not one of those people.
Early adopters, the low hanging fruit kind of.
Oh, there, you do say it in one of the bullet, I was focused on the table, yeah.
How many, there were 9 items.
I'm so good. 1, 2,
Okay.
3. At least 4.
That's great. Cost was cited in the top 5 barriers. Again, this is consistent with past years where cost has been a significant barrier across all the different technologies. But we have a number of other concerns that are still out there. And you can just see them here stated. People don't know about them. They can't install things at their home, maybe they're renters, et cetera. And when it comes to awareness, you'll see that the greatest awareness is right up top there for heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC. So think there's market trends, again, there's some nuance here, but that was the service or program that people identified, most often knowing that we offered. And also rebates for electric vehicles. And then one thing that's interesting, I think, on here was the one-time bill credit. There's a very high awareness considering for that one-time bill credit that took place. So just pointing that
That's
out.
good.
Or to ask,
That's-
yes.
And it made a difference, huh?
It made a difference, the communications that took place around it seemed to
Awareness, yes.
Yeah.
stood out to people. 51% of customers surveyed have been to the website. And if you look at the previous rates of website visitation over the years, we are seeing like a huge increase over time of the number of people who state that they have visited the website. Which is great. And we also note one thing here, that just for the SEVI 3 and 4 groups, there is kind of a surprising postal mail call out that it seems to be potentially an effective channel for reaching SEVI 3 and 4 customers.
And that is interesting.
Something that's how they discovered, the website was through postal mail.
We have found it in Mountain View that communication with our underserved communities works well with text and it works well with mail, but that they don't use email typically.
Interesting. That kind of
Sorry
seems
to
to keep the same.
interrupt. Keep going.
That's fine. Customers visited, so there was a change this year. In the past, we saw customers visiting the website most commonly for rates information. And this time, we saw rates come in the second place, but we actually saw rebates and incentives come in the first place. Yeah, it's definitely something to celebrate. Discounted, so when we go and we're looking ahead and we're asking respondents what they're most interested in for the future, which programs would they want to participate in? We saw a significant increase for home battery storage, actually interest among the respondents. And you can see overall, like there were generally bumps in interest for the programs that we shared with customers from 2024 to 2026. Similar to the prior question that we had earlier in the survey, purchase considerations are dominated by cost. It's number one. But number two, kind of closely following that for people's various concerns, the health and safety. That's a big part of their purchase consideration as well. And environmental impact continues to rank last as their main purchase, their number one purchase consideration among respondents.
That surprises me.
Yeah,
Are you saying it's always that way?
it's been consistently this way, yeah. So that's why a lot of our messaging, a lot of our marketing, we lead with cost, health, and safety as the benefits and better performance and comfort. We really don't typically lean into reduce emissions as your reason to go electric. We all feel that, right? That's our mission and that's our purpose. But there's also, this is consistent with national research and national polling as well, that we have access to those studies.
We also ask people about their beliefs around all electric. What do they think about, all electric and other electric appliances technologies? And we saw this kind of interesting increase in belief that they are better for the environment. So they're recognizing that these things are better for the environment. But we're also seeing, we continue to see that they're more expensive to operate as one of the items that comes up here. So a mix of findings across the board from the respondents on kind of what they agree and disagree with when it comes to the electric home.
You want high numbers, but except for the third from last one.
Yes, the one where they're more expensive. That's the one you don't want.
It was a speed reading test.
And you will, of course, have access to all these, so you already do, to take a look in greater detail. So in summary, more people are coming and visiting our website and resources. We have greater awareness this year. We're seeing our favorability to be quite positive among respondents. And the likelihood to purchase all these technologies that we're talking about seems to be down right now. So that's an important thing to call out. We have some concerns around costs that have continued to kind of plague the technologies that we're promoting. And there's an opportunity to engage deeper and in different ways that work for the SEBI 3 and 4 groups.
Great, okay. So let's start out with questions. We have 10 more minutes for discussion, so that's pretty good. Yeah, okay. Chair Klein.
Sure, and I'll try to do rapid fire, first, thank you for the new website. I do think it's makes things, and it's attractive as well as people link in. I think that's a positive thing. As far as the survey, love the results. Language, and from a Sunnyvale standpoint, and we're looking at equity access right now, or equity and assessment. 14% of our residents speak Spanish at home, 14% speak Chinese at home. So we're already looking at a quarter of our residents that don't speak English at home, and then you start throwing in the other diversity within our community. How you reach out to from a program standpoint, would love to talk more about how we outreach into different communities that are non-English speaking, to more educate them on what SVCE is, as well as programs, rebates, all that. And so I'll talk offline about some of the groups that we have. Mobile home communities came up in passing, and I don't know how their cost structure is. Do they bill per space, or do they bill for the whole community? Does anybody have a quick answer on that?
Yeah, a quick answer. They're usually a master metered
That's
property. So typically when we speak to individual residents, they don't directly pay a bill, so they aren't.
Or they metered, are they then split to, I know we don't bill to them, but does the landlord then divvy it up or then sub-bill? I mean, there's a difference. Is it a flat fee for everyone, and basically here's a portion of what the whole site uses?
They're usually sub-metered.
Okay.
So as an example, there'll be a number two that can be individually on Carefara rates, even if not everyone in the park is on Carefara rates.
But who gets that bill? Is it the landlord? Then
We're paying to the landlord.
okay, that's what, just double checking. Because I don't think I've asked that question before, and how we incentivize that community to decarbonize. I know it's helping the landlord, but it's helping everyone there becomes a question. And then language understood. Oh, yeah, just overall, this is positive. And one of the things that we keep, doing as a giveaway is induction burners. And I keep, the technology might finally be there. I've been waiting for this for years, of solar fans, from the concept of, for single family neighborhoods, the attics, and trying to, as opposed, getting the heat out of the attics when the sun is shining, and overnight, no battery backup needed. It's like when it's hottest in the day, get the heat hot air out of the building. And then conceivably that's something that might be beneficial to like a mobile home community, because they're not going to be able to do large HVACs. They're not, too many of them have, air conditioners that they've used for years, and trying to get that from a space standpoint, it becomes very, very much an issue of where they could even site HVACs and other things. But solar fans, I've been looking at to put into our attic for years, and looking online, there might finally be the technologies there to make that viable. But it's something that this organization should think about as a low cost summer issue. And I'll leave it at that. Sorry. Thank you.
Just following up on the mobile home park, I know one of the ones I hear our mobile home residents talk about is indoor air quality. You know, that is something they all use gas or propane, and they don't really have the opportunity to switch to electric because they don't control the wires and things, and so I don't know if that's something we can help with, but for them, that indoor air quality is a biggie. Okay, all right, so more questions? Any more questions?
I'll just make a comment. There's a lot to dig into here, and it'll take me a while to go through the slides and really think that through, but it's good to have some data, and it's also good to have it on a timeline. But I did notice you'd see some jumps in there because there was no 2025.
Yeah,
Was it, yeah, it was like a 24, 25 survey. Yeah, we had some, there were a couple of lapse years due to contracting and some other just challenges with vendors and things.
I was just gonna say, tagging on to the language comment, the survey was 96% English speakers, so, you know, I wonder what may be uncovered, because some of those other populations are very highly, you know, concentrated in our neighborhoods, and we're not really picking up their responses, so.
Yeah, although I would just say that we have more than 40% of our people don't speak English at home. But that doesn't mean they're not really good at English. That means they don't speak it at home.
Absolutely, but
Yeah,
yeah.
and so it's kind
It's
of a
not-
hard nut to
yes.
crack, really.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know. Okay, I was gonna make a couple comments. Wait a minute, did everybody else have a turn
Oh,
first?
I forgot one thing, just one
Go
thing. I just wanted to I wanted to reemphasize what Sally said. The concept that a third of the respondents said $10 would force me to me, that is pretty big but it's saying that at least 2/3 conceivably could be moved to a higher cost without effect. And I think so it's yeah, this is a small percentage, but I think this gives us that feel as this organization moves forward that there are, because the cost of energy is only a small portion of your bill, that there would actually be an interest to go to $10 more, doesn't make a difference. And so I think, you know, that kind of gives us direction as we're looking at future rates, the champion, you know, green champion, whatever, that makes a big difference. So thank you,
Note
Chair.
that it was 1% was 58 cents too, as another just
Right.
stat to keep in mind, 1% is 58 cents.
See, now that I think about it, I had the same reaction, I was struck by it, but then I also think, there's so much inertia. And this is sort of
Yeah.
would you pay more money so the oil companies can thrive? Say, no, but what would they actually do? So I wouldn't overreact to that.
Yeah, it's-
So PG&E can use, I mean, it's a tool that can be used.
Right.
So anyway,
Okay, a couple comments. Do we still have a used electric vehicles program?
we have an EV rebate still for income qualified customers. That's for new and used, and it's $2,000.
But didn't we used to have a used EV program?
PG&E
The
currently
vets
has
used to
one.
have one.
A PG&E?
They used to have an EV credit.
PG&E currently offers a $4,000 rebate, or it depends on income, and that stacks with our $2,000 income
I thought we
qualified
had
rebate.
some sort of program. All right. I just think that induction cooktops are, you know, we're having trouble selling those, and I know I tried to give one for Christmas, and it turned out that the installation charge was gonna cost more than the cooktop because of the size it came in. So, you know, that I ran out without a Christmas present. I've been getting in trouble since then. Anyway, so I think that another concept that this brings back to me is that we need to, and we should be getting information about induction cookbooks out at all of the planning desks. Because when people come in for a remodel, they're not necessarily knowledgeable, and we wanna make sure that our planners are explaining, this technology and that it's available, because if you're building a new kitchen, putting one in is duck soup, it's very, very easy. And but I don't think the education, we've tried to educate our planners and the number of them didn't know about it, so I'm sure the ones at Mountain View are not unique. I wanna make sure all the planners know about induction cooktops.
Could we send them one? My portable unit was $55 and I got a $50 credit.
Maybe we could, that's a.
Well, and some of the green fairs, like Greentown has, they have the cooktop there. They even have a loaner program, so you
Yeah,
can try
I think
it,
there's
yeah.
maybe one from the library, actually.
Might be,
The
yeah.
libraries.
Yeah, okay, and then I
Next
think,
to the Narcan. Sorry, that's not funny, but.
I think we need to get more information on the cost of operation. That is another thing that has come up in my conversations, and I haven't necessarily had a good, good answer for it. I know, before we put in our HVAC system, we went through all of our past bills and looked at, our electrical use and all that kind of stuff, so we knew what it was, because before we didn't know what it was. That doesn't tell you what it's gonna be, what it's going to be, and I think that if we could get some information from people who've had induction cooktops or had, various things for 5 or 10 years, and compare their electric use to similar house that doesn't have that, I think that'd be really kind of a good storyline. Okay, and then,
I'll chime in on that. I have had an induction cooktop built in for over 10 years.
so see, we could use Larry's house, okay.
Larry.
No, no,
I mean,
yeah,
Brian's house, yeah.
It is expensive and it sucks power. Like when you turn that on, the needle starts to spin and you're paying at the highest rate, right? Around 6 p.m.
Mhm.
Because we usually eat at
Yes,
7,
yeah.
so between 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Right? It exacerbates the demand problem at that point in time.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Yeah, and
But we love it.
And don't forget, it's strange but true that some people actually don't cook. I don't know how they get by, but I have friends who do not cook. So,
I do
there's,
too.
yeah,
It's the microwave.
it's strange. Yeah, a microwave maybe, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, sorry,
Um,
we digress.
And then, another thing is, in Mountain View, we have civic academies on alternating years for Mandarin speakers and Spanish speakers. And I know we do have a public works evening. Maybe we could get information into these academies. But the thing that's been so really cool about these academies is it's a 6-week thing. And they come every Wednesday night for 6 weeks. They get dinner and childcare and one night is public works, one night is police and fire, one night is parks and rec, anyway, so they learn a lot about the ideas to teach them how to engage in Mountain View civic life. And so I think that if we could get brought into that would be good. And these people have functioned as incredible ambassadors to their community and in our community. We've really been impressed by the follow through. They've taken this education that they've been given, as something really special that they have an obligation to use, which is, great. So I just wanna, okay, so we're a little past time. I think that brings us to the end of this.
Just for the record, Chair, I'd just like to know, we don't have any members of the public in attendees, therefore there's no public.
Oh, good, that's right, I forgot public comments, all right. But I do want to ask one question, I think is germane, since we're the executive committee. We all got an email a few days ago, it's just gonna go over a few minutes, I hope this is okay. We all got an email a few days ago about the grand jury report for Marin Clean Energy. And I think it's important that we Monica reached out to us, that was very good. But we're gonna get questions about it, and I just wanted to kind of officially ask, what is, Silicon Valley Clean Energy process to deal with this grand jury report?
Great question. So, we are, and Mike can also help to answer.
I'm so glad Michael is
Yeah,
here to help us with that.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to respond to that. I think, it's still pretty early stages. The report came out about 10 days ago, and there's an opportunity 90 days after the report's released for respondents here to provide sort of responses, findings, and the recommendations in the report. And so that's another punctuation point that's going to come a few months down the road. MCE is also undergoing a governance review that they've started, sort of an independent governance review, that'll produce some findings, and that'll be sort of separate from the grand jury report, but kind of related. And so, we're tracking those things. We're reviewing the grand jury report. We're sort of assessing our own practices and are considering whether we need to make any changes based on the findings of the grand jury report. And so we're going to do that as sort of a preliminary assessment based on the report today. We're going to sort of, calibrate that based on the responses that come in, as well as the governance review that they're undertaking. But it'll probably be a few-month process given the timeline for the grand jury report and their governance review.
So would we expect to hear about this at a board meeting at like a CEO, as part of a CEO report? Or if you think things rise to the level where we need an item, we'll have an item, or do you have any?
What do you
think is gonna happen?
If there was any part in the process for that review, we would bring things back to the board with recommendations for policy changes. It wouldn't be an item on the Marine Clean Energy report, because that would be the appropriate way to do it, but to the extent that there was policy changes through this due diligence, that those would be brought back to the board for consideration.
I'd like to make a comment because I was looking at this yesterday. I have not read the full grand jury report, but I did note on the website where comments are due, and even MCE isn't going to make comments, or they don't have to make comments before, I think it's the middle of September.
Oh, yeah, you get a lot of time.
But from a organizational standpoint, we're looking at updating the policy. So that's one of the things. We're about 10 years into the organization's life. And we started this last year of updating policy and just generally taking a step back and looking at this. And so and I've had lots of discussions with Monica on it already. It's evaluating our existing policies and looking at, what the grand jury said was good or bad about MCE, and figuring out what we're doing and whether or not we should be making any changes. But it's not in direct comparison. We're all dealing with, the organizations, or all the CCAs are slightly different.
Oh, yeah,
how they're set
they
up,
are.
and how many people are on the board, and all reserves and customers, and just kind of transparency. But I do think that, this staff and, from Monica's standpoint, that's one of the things that we want to stay ahead of this for the good of the organization.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's very important to be transparent about these things. And also, I had some personal experience at the water district. We were the subject of a grand jury report on the projects that I actually was involved in. And several of the things that they brought up were really legitimate. And it was kind of like, we were in our silo, and so we didn't see them because they were things that people from outside had troubles with. And when we realized it, we were able to fix it. I mean, this was about climate change, and how you couldn't find it on our website. And we realized it was because our search language was so limited that they couldn't find it on the website. You really had to know exactly where, and that was crazy. So we were, there were things we were actually able to fix to make much better. And good. A little painful, but good. Okay.
Governance is always an ongoing process.
Yeah, okay. So with that, I will like to, are there any committee staff remarks? That was my remark about the Anybody else have anything they would like to share?
I thank SVCE / the Cal CCA for setting up the tour of Diablo Canyon power plant and it was phenomenal. There were 3 of us that were down there from SVCE on Tuesday, and I'd just like to go on the record for thanking SVCE for making that happen and just saying it was a wonderful educational experience.
We went to.
Yeah, it was a
Oh,
wonderful
the kids,
educational
yeah.
experience. I remember it was great, yeah. Okay, so with that, guess we're adjourned. Thank you very much. And I don't know when the next meeting is. August, okay.
There we go.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care, everybody.